Hello guys and welcome to this video. As you can see, I will be showing you how to make these cinnamon swirls. The recipe itself is very simple. You're going to need some ground cardamom, some butter, some dry yeast, a little bit of salt, some sugar, some milk, a large egg, and some plain flour. I'll begin by melting the butter. Traditionally, you would probably have kneaded the butter into the dough after having combined all the other ingredients. But I've tried both methods, and melting the butter is way easier and doesn't really seem to affect the final result that much. So I'll be melting the butter here. I then add the cardamom to the flour, followed by the salt. I then mix this together to spread it out into the mixture so we get an even distribution of cardamom and salt. As soon as the butter is then fully melted, I will be adding the sugar. This I will follow with the milk, and the purpose of adding the milk now into the melted butter is to make sure that the mixture is lukewarm when I'll be adding the yeast in a little bit. This will allow the yeast a better environment to kickstart its fermentation process, and will mean that we will have a quicker rise in our dough later on. So here I'm adding the milk into the mixture. If your mixture is not warm enough at this point, you can heat it up a little on the stove. It should be hot enough to feel warm but not scalding. I will now be adding the yeast into the mixture, whisking it around, and then giving it around 5 minutes to bloom. When the yeast is ready, you should begin to see this brown foam forming on the top of the liquid, and this means it's ready. At this point, I will then add the egg to the mixture and just whisk it around. So now it's time to add the flour to the mixture, and here I will be adding it a little at a time and then stirring it together. And it's really important to keep an eye on the consistency of the dough at this point, because depending on what flour you use, this might be a little bit too much. You want the dough to be wet but not stick to your hands. And as you can see, I'm just stirring it, adding a little more, stirring it. Stirring it some more, and at some point you will see that it's probably easier to drop the fork or spoon or whatever you've been using and use your hands instead. So as you see here, I'm just using my hands to try and combine the dough together, and so I can put it out on the table and begin to knead it properly. And when the dough is then beginning to come together, you can put it out on the table, and here now you can begin to knead it properly. And so this is what I'm doing. You want the dough to fold over itself, so to form some gluten bonds. So you'll just knead it, fold it, fold it, and this should take some time. You should probably spend around 5 to 10 minutes kneading your dough, depending on how fast you're going. But you can see my dough is now coming together. It's shiny on the outside and pretty firm, but still smooth and flexible. So we'll put it to rest and leave it for around 2 hours, depending on your climate. If it's warmer, maybe a little less. If it's cold, you can leave it for longer. You will know it's ready when it has risen to approximately double the size that it was to begin with. While we're waiting for that, we can make the remonce, or the good stuff inside of the cinnamon swirls. And this is just a mixture of butter, sugar, cinnamon, and I also add a little bit of cardamom to the remonce. You can leave it out if you want. It's already in the dough, so it's just to add a little bit extra flavor. You will then just whisk the dry ingredients together using a spoon, fork, whatever you have. So when this is properly combined, you will then be adding the butter. The softer the butter is, the easier it will be to mix it together. Mine is pretty soft, but it could have been even softer, which would have made it easier. You can see I'm having a little trouble mixing it together in this pretty small bowl. And here you can see the final product. It should just be like a brown paste. So as we can see now, the dough has risen and it's approximately double the size that it was previously. So we will just take it and put it out onto the countertop. add a little flour maybe beforehand. I'm going to use a bit of what was left in my pot from mixing it together. So I'm putting it out, and it's important that you don't try and knead it together before putting it out or stretching it out, because this will make it a lot easier to use the rolling pin, or I'm using a water bottle to get it to move out properly without it pulling itself back into shape. If we had kneaded it beforehand, this would have been a lot more difficult. When your dough then forms a large rectangle, you'll be adding the Remonce. I found that the easiest way to do this is to just take it in small clumps and just spread it all over the place. When you are done doing that, you can then just use your hands to smear it out until you've covered the whole surface. We will now begin folding the dough, so we'll be folding it in thirds. So fold it once and then cover it with the other end on another fold, and it's now that we're beginning to form these layers that will look so nice in the final product. You'll then take your rolling pin and roll out from the middle towards the ends, and this will make sure that you get any air bubbles out before you begin rolling it out properly. You will do this very lightly and don't apply too much force, because if we get air bubbles, it will create problems later on when we begin folding it again. And here you should just be careful not to push too hard so you don't get the Remonce pushed out in the edges. I will then be adding a little bit extra of this Remonce, and this will just provide us with another layer in the final product again. So I'll be folding it over just in halves this time, and I'll end up with this square, which I will then roll out a little bit more until we have a larger rectangle, again making sure that I get any air bubbles out before I begin applying any real pressure. And when you have a pretty large square like this, you are done rolling it out, and you can begin forming the cinnamon swirls themselves. Here I'll begin just cutting the dough in half, so it's easier to handle. So I'll just chop it into two and keep one part while working on the other. So I'll just put it over here, and here you can just see how we have created all these layers when we have been folding the dough together, and this is what we want to see. I will now be cutting strips of approximately 1 centimeter width, or around half an inch. You will then take this strip, put it onto the table, and start twisting in opposite directions in each end. And this is now where we form the swirls. When you're done doing this, you'll grab one end and you'll take it the other end and wrap it around twice, and then grab it with the same fingers that are holding the other end, and you now pull in the ends. So this way you're hiding the ugly ends on the bottom, and you get this nice clean cinnamon swirl. Here I just repeat it for the second swirl, twisting, pulling it a little bit to make it longer. When you do the twisting around your hand and grabbing the end, it's important that you do it in the right direction, because as you can see, the swirls will begin to unfurl if you do it the other way around. And here just again grab the ends, pull them in, hiding away the bottoms, so we get again a clean looking swirl. You then do this for the rest of the dough. I get around 12 cinnamon swirls out of a portion of this size, so here you can see them. And now it's just time to let them rest, and I leave them for approximately 2 hours. I usually just put them into the oven, having the oven turned off of course, because then there is not any air draft or anything drying them out. If you want, you can turn on the oven light, which will make it a little warmer, making them rise a little bit quicker. You can see them without it. And here the swirls should not double in size, but definitely have increased in size. At this point, we're almost ready to bake them. We're only missing a little bit of egg to create a nice, pretty shiny surface. So I will be turning on the oven at approximately 200 degrees Celsius, just using lower and upper heat. And I usually bake them for around 10 to 12 minutes, but again, it depends on the oven and how crispy you want them. So here I'm just cracking an egg and whisking it together, and then using a brush to paint it onto the cinnamon swirls. And try and cover all these small nooks and crannies in the swirls, so you get a nice smile look. So now we're actually ready to bake the swirls, and I recommend baking them one sheet at a time to get a more even baking. So here I'm just putting them into the oven. And again, it should take around 10 to 12 minutes, but keep an eye on them and make sure they don't get burned, because the caramel, the Remonce, has a tendency to get burned in the bottom if you leave them in there for too long. So now we're done and we're ready to see the finished product. So here we can see the wonderful cinnamon swirls, and I just think that they look a lot cooler than the regular cinnamon rolls or cinnamon buns. And the swirly technique also somewhat contains the Remonce of the good stuff better within them, and they suck up a lot of this crispy caramel. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, I would really appreciate it if you press like and subscribe to my channel, as I will probably be putting out more interesting videos in the future. So thank you for watching, and I will see you